Patrick with HCC Specialty Cars in Dallas, Texas. I'm going to talk to you today about our latest offering, a 1992 Porsche 968 Turbo S. It is the first and only prototype of this model, which Porsche only built 14 of. It's likely the most important car that Porsche made that you've never heard of. This is chassis number 800412. The only one with a chassis in that sequence, as the other cars had a different sequence. That is because this car was pulled off the assembly line as a club sport back in 1992. And that is what, and I'll talk a little bit later, but they transformed the car into what it is now. First, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Porsche at that time. As many people know, in the early 90s, Porsche was struggling. They had the 928 the plan was for the 928 to take over the 911, and that plan failed. The 944 was getting dated, and the 911 was very expensive to build and also had the old air-cooled engine technology. So they were at a tough spot. As a result, they decided to upgrade the 944 and create the 968, which obviously had a very different look to the car. And in that, they had the Club Sport, which was the car that was a light and more track-oriented car. In order for Porsche to have cars in certain race series, in this case, the ADAC GT racing series in Germany, their cars had to go through a homologation process. So this is the prototype car that allowed for that. So it had to be a street ready and street legal car. What the engineers, there were two engineers that were responsible for the build on this car in Weissach, and they came up with the concept of taking the Club Sport off the line, like I said, and they made some changes to it. So what they first started with was the 3-liter 4-cylinder motor. They took the heads from a 944 Turbo S. They took the turbocharger from the 993 GT2 and made some other modifications to the car, which would include the 6-speed gearbox that has some stronger gearing and a longer gearing on it. They added the limited slip differential to the car. They lowered it by 20 millimeters. And then some visual things that you can see is they partnered with Tech Art to create these ducts here for, obviously to allow air to go into the car more easily. And they increased the size of this inlet. You'll see that the car has Speedline wheels, and it has a larger and adjustable rear spoiler on the exterior. Those are the key exterior changes to this car. As you can see, it's a beautiful speed yellow, which at the time had not been used much in these cars. A little bit later, it got more popular. And some of the changes that you can see on the inside are that it has the bucket seats, manual crank windows. It's a little more Spartan. The car is very sort of simple, but also very usable on the road. What the package created was 305 horsepower and 368 pound-feet of torque, which was quite impressive. In fact, it had some better statistics than some of the 911s at the time, but still people stuck to the 911 in the end, which is part of the reason why they only made 14 of these cars. Porsche and its engineers had planned to make 100 of these cars, and they didn't for the reasons that I started to talk about a moment ago. But more specifically, the 911 was still king at Porsche. It was evident that the customers thought that the soul and the DNA of Porsche was the 911. At the time, they had the 911 RS. They had the 964 out with the 964 Turbo, both the 3.3 and then the later 3.6 liter engines. And the 993 was on the horizon. So customers were more focused on those cars, the 911s, than they were in something like this. It just sort of got lost in the mix. So Porsche had this car for 2 years, as I mentioned before, registered in their name and licensed like this. They later sold it to the founder of X-Raid, the car racing team, Sven Quandt, who owned and cherished the car until 2019. He drove the car quite a bit at first, for the first years he had it, and then he later kept it in his collection until the time that he sold it. Herbert Quandt was his father, who was an instrumental leader in the BMW, so definitely had some car history in his family. Based on the full amount of information and the archive information, documents, folders, and such that we have, I'm going to read to you the things that we have. So we do notice in the records that the car is all original with the exception of an engine replacement at 72,000 kilometers. It doesn't state the reason why, but the engine was replaced by the factory under warranty. So we have the service records, the service booklet with the stamps. We have the purchase documents when Sven purchased the car from Porsche. We have the homologation documents. We have press photos, correspondence from Porsche, different letters and things that were written from Porsche. And I really enjoyed reading the letters from Jürgen Barth and Gerd Schmidt, who are the two engineers that created this car. One other thing to note is this car was kind of hidden off the radar for a number of years. And I mean, I think certain people would figure that it was with Sven, but people forgot about the car. And it has recently come back into notice. And I believe that a lot of that is because this car was, has come to the market, right? So there's been a lot more attention to it. It's a fantastic car. To see it in person is really incredible. We're going to next do a video where we show the car driving and on the road. So please stay tuned for that. That'll be our second video. I hope you've enjoyed kind of learning about the nuance, perhaps a model you were not aware of before. And we love having it here and can't wait for it to find a new home. I really encourage you to go to the website to see some of the things that we have found. Car magazine articles that have been written through the years on the car, some of the pictures and things that we talked about, the press photos, to really understand sort of the importance in the history of this car and the Porsche story. And so appreciate your watching the video. Please check out this and other cars on our website, and see you next time on the driving videos.